Hello, everyone, and happy Gratitude Month. I've been spending a lot of time this November really thinking about so far just where am I putting my gratitude? Where am I being intentional about being thankful? And one of the things that I think is really critical is to analyze where we do this with those on our team. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about today about positive reinforcement and making really smart recognition decisions and strategies, both within companies as well as within your team. So, one of the things that I think is important is, well, why do we do recognition? Why does positive reinforcement and gratitude, like where does that make an impact in our employee culture? And one of the most critical things is that people are wired that way. People are wired for positive reinforcement. They want to make sure that they're doing a good job, that the things that they're putting effort and energy are noticed, and that people want to be in a positive environment, right? So, all of those things are really critical when we think about recognition to the individual. For you as an organization, one of the things that's really critical, especially or for a team, is when you're thinking about recognition, part of why you're doing this is making sure that you're reinforcing the right things, that you're continuing to tell your team as you reinforce different things that this is what matters. This is where we need to spend our energy. And that then in of itself helps to focus people on the strategic objectives that you have, the goals that you're after, the critical things that you need to make some changes in. One of the other pieces is that it gives a motivating environment, which creates acceleration. And so, as there's so many different things that you're trying to accomplish on your team or within your business, recognition done in a way that's really intentional helps to make sure that the acceleration is one, focused in the right area, but two, that it's actually happening. So, a couple of lessons learned for you to consider as you think about recognition and positive reinforcement is making sure that you're doing this in a way that's actually meeting the employee's need. So, people like to be recognized in different ways. And so, having a conversation with each member of your team or having a conversation across your employee group to understand, hey, we're doing this for recognition. We're doing this to be able to give you positive feedback, like what works, what doesn't work, what ideas do you have? You can ask this in a really neutral way, just to say we want to continue to grow. We want to understand best what works for you. Oftentimes, what I find with clients is they're spending a lot of money and energy in recognition programs, and yet they're not really sure if they're working. They're not sure if it's meeting the employee need or if it's actually helping to accelerate towards those business goals. And so, those are the things that you're working hard to uncover when you have these conversations to really understand from the employee's perspective. The other thing is make sure that you're reinforcing the right things. One of the things that was hardest for me when I was on different teams or I'd be coaching different leaders when I was internal part of an organization is that there would be folks that said, "Hey, way to go, Joe. Thanks for working extra hours and missing your kid's softball game and doing all these different things to serve this project need." And what was intriguing about that is that maybe on an off basis, that was something that we wanted to highlight, like going above and beyond. But the message that was actually conveyed pretty subconsciously was we actually want you to be a worker, not a whole person. And we actually want to reinforce the message that working nights, weekends, missing family things actually is something that we value because that's what we're talking about. And it was interesting when I would talk to leaders and say, "Hey, is that what you're intending?" They would say, "Oh my goodness, no, that's not what I'm intending." But I'd say that's what you're promoting. That's what you're putting positive reinforcement around. And so it helped them to shift some of the intention around. They could say, "Joe, thank you so very much for going above and beyond, for taking some extra initiative." And then they would also make sure that they were balancing that conversation with, "Hey, thank you so very much, Heather, for the way that you really solved that problem. I could tell that you made sure that you were hearing the different challenges that were in front of us. You asked a lot of questions. You talked to some different folks. You did your research and you came with a bunch of ideas. Now that tells me how I'm showing up and I'm reinforcing the way that I did the work, not only when I did the work or just a thank you for just, really blood, sweat, and tears. So being intentional about the type of reinforcement and actually what it's long term telling people, even subconsciously, they might not even recognize it, but they know, hey, this is an organization or an environment that promotes these things because that's what I hear repeated a lot. The last piece is to make sure that it's timely and specific. And so one of the things that is my own experience is we were actually doing internal. One of the best practices that I learned is doing handwritten thank you notes when we recognized something that was either contributing to our values or maybe reaching a goal or something that we'd coached an employee on that they were doing and they were moving in the right direction. So those were three critical ways that we were looking for opportunities to say thank you. And then the handwritten thank you note was one that was really obviously low cost, took a little bit of time, but it's actually a pretty good amount of space. So you can't just say, "Hey, Heather, thanks, way to go, you." actually need to say, "Thank you so very much for working diligently on that project, for talking to the different individuals before we, walked into the meeting. Thank you for contributing in a way that was how we coached you. I was how I met with you and coached you on. I really feel like that you heard my advice and you were able to apply that. I saw the impact of that coaching in action, and really appreciate you being a part of the team." That is specific. It's also talking about the things that you are seeing in the coaching. The other thing that we would do, and I think that's really critical, and what I do within my own business and my own teams now, is I try and use the words of the values of my business. And you can do this within your team too. Heather, when you did this really showcased our value of excellence, and you showed up in a way that was partnering with our clients and was really listening into the needs that they had, and felt like that you were alongside them, not necessarily just from over here kind of telling them what to do. So excellence and partnership are things that are really critical for me. The more I use those words, the more that employees and team members can actually understand what they mean in a day-to-day environment. So you're reinforcing values, you're reinforcing coaching, you're reinforcing goals, all in how you're talking about it. And in order to do it specific, you have to do it timely, because you won't remember what happened a couple of weeks from now when you're actually trying to put this together. So being intentional about those things is going to make a huge impact on the way that you're paying attention to your folks, and that they're hearing the right things that you want them to be able to lean into and spend more energy on. And ultimately, it's going to create a really positive environment that people want to come back to.